Right. Normally there's a little announcement saying that they're going to record, but I haven't heard the announcement, so I'm just going to assume that it's recording. Okay, that's lovely. Right, now, Phonics International is a very full, comprehensive body of work, and it will support you throughout the whole school. So that includes your older learners as well, if you want it to. It's also a flexible body of work, and I'm going to make suggestions which are based on that flexibility. Now, you might have heard of the phrase fidelity to program. So one of the big issues that's important is that not only do you have a body of work to work with, but there's accompanying guidance as well. So I'm going to describe my guidance, which is different from other phonics programs. So I refer not only to systematic synthetic phonics, but also incidental. And the incidental phonics teaching is what makes it very liberating for you and able for you to decide where you enter the program and which part of it you might use with your learners, whether you feel the need to revisit or skip, that type of thing. Now, Martin knows and may have shared with you that there are various videos already online, free to watch. And so over time, maybe that's something that you could do as a staff or you could do as individuals. So we're not going to spend lots of time doing that today. But it is important that you aren't fearful of getting stuck into it. And what you'll find is that I use lots of really corny short phrases to make a point. So bear with me because I'm really corny. But one of these is the maths of the phonics. So that's MATHS. And by that I mean the amount of practice children get is very important. And the amount of practice is based on two things: the sheer content on the resources themselves. So that counts the amount of code, that's the letter sound correspondences, the amount of printed words children get to practice with, the amount of cumulative decodable plain texts, not just reading books. So we're going to talk a lot about how that is what enables them to really learn. You need a good quality moment and quantity to embed that learning. I'm also going to talk a lot about mindset, because it's my experience and my knowledge that we can inadvertently prevent children from learning when we think they're not ready, when we think they can't do it, or when we think they need something different. So what you know already is that children have many and varied challenges, and sometimes that might well be their level of intelligence or their level of spoken language. They might have special needs, maybe Down syndrome or some form of autism. So we know that they are many and varied. But actually, it's exactly the same alphabetic code knowledge and phonics skills for reading and for spelling that the children need. All of the children need this. Now, I've also got very different ideas from other people, because if you watch various phonics programs and if you watch phonics practice from across the world, invariably you see the adult working very hard, doing the phonics to the children, and the children sitting on a carpet with mini whiteboards. Well, my approach doesn't include any mini whiteboard work. Now, that doesn't mean that now and again, to ring the changes, you can't do a phonics and spelling activity using mini whiteboards. So mini whiteboard work is sound to print. It's where the adult says a sound or a word or a simple sentence and the children record it and they all show you at the same time. So it's interactive and it can be engaging and fun. But that's not the core provision in my approach. And you may not know, but I've actually got 3 DfE-validated phonics programs. There was a 4th, but it was online and that's no longer available. And so really, it's that the same principles are underlying all of them. And one of the problems I've had for many, many years is teachers' adversity against worksheets and workbooks. I've literally got a slide going back earlier than 2011. Well, no, 2011, which is writing to our inspectorate, Ofsted, saying, what's your opinion about worksheets and workbooks? And Ofsted has to write back, they can be very suitable when they are designed to address children's needs and they can be used as an assessment tool. And that's the point. The design of the resources I've made is not just an off-the-shelf W.H. Smith phonics book. These are really, really well-designed resources. So one of my biggest problems were teachers thinking worksheets and workbooks were not appropriate. But we're teaching reading, spelling and writing. There is nothing more fit for purpose. So the biggest thing to appreciate is what might look plain to you and definitely repetitive, because teaching the alphabetic code and putting the practice in is repetitive, but children love routines. They are secure with routines, and it is them applying themselves to these routines which gives them that opportunity to embed their learning. So right from the start, I want you to be sort of really thinking people. Think about your slower to learn children. If you just have a sea of flashcards and you're putting flashcards in front of children and expecting them to learn the code, and then the phonics lesson comes to an end, yes, some children might remember that and some more will remember with the repetition. But what about your slower children, your pickly children, your autistic children, your wriggling on the mat children, you know, the special needs type of children, the slower to learn ones, are not going to learn from a sea of flashcards. So although there are flashcard routines, they are not the be all and end all. And this really is not about the teachers working hard so much at the front of a lesson when you do your revisit and review. The adults work hard after the children have applied themselves to new material. So when we start looking at material, this is what I want to do, is to set you up with these ideas in mind, and then to show you the scope, what that looks like. Another thing that's different from my work is that it is designed for all stakeholders, literally all of you. So teachers, teaching assistants, special needs teachers, senior management, the learners themselves, and the parents and carers at home. I've put everything into them that everybody needs. But you need to put some time in as well. And although Martin's absolutely brilliant, you've got to grasp the nettle. So he can be, and he already is a conduit between me and you. You yourselves are going to need to put some time into this. But Phonics International is completely free, massive body of work, but you won't need all of it. So it's very important that you appreciate what I call core resources and core provision, and the additional things that you can call upon, or you might want to call upon. And it could be things for the younger children that you set up in your play areas, your continuous provision. It could be games and activities that you actually send home to be done at home, or to do in a half term or the end of a term. And so really it's getting to know the body of work, and then also where your children need to access it. Another issue for you as a whole school is it's really easy when you start a new program with beginners. So if you're in P1 and you're starting from the beginning, that's not a problem. You just start here at the beginning and work through it. But if you've got older learners, you need to do a baseline assessment to get an idea about the code or the letter sound correspondences that they know reasonably automatically, and they don't know. But it's actually more than that for older learners, because it's about your judgment of where you know they're at, where you think you need to place them in the program. So you'll find out that the program's got 12 units of work, which we'll look at in a minute, and you need to think, where do we need to access that? And you mustn't start off thinking, Well, that unit of work is for that age of child. So although you might start in P1 and aspire to get to end of Unit 4 or Unit 5, you might be using the material in those units with much older learners if they need it, if that's where they're at. That's where the flexibility comes into this. The other thing is how important it is for you yourselves to get to grips with the alphabetic code complexities. And I know that Martin says you've already watched the little video and been on the Alphabetic Code Charts site. Now, only last week, I had a senior manager say to me that the teachers were saying the chart was too hard for the Year 3 children, and so they're going to start it in Year 4. This is not correct. You need to start it from P1, because when you start using it, it's for you yourself. So the chart is not just for children to understand they're being taught a code with the language of the code. It's to support you and to find a systematic structure way through, but also because you're showing a comprehensive level of code, you are indicating to them that they're going to find and discover more bits of code, and you need to call upon that chart as you go along. So of course, little P1s are not going to get to grips with that chart. But when you start to use it sensibly in your lesson introductions, you will be amazed at how quickly they pick up what you are doing with that. So I've just got a handy one here, a tabletop. Now I'm also going to talk about resources because everything you need is free and online. We also provide some ready-made resources, and you might want to select some of those when funds allow, rather than having to print off some frees or flashcards and start laminating them and things like that. So there's a cost to the school either way. So you can build up over time. Right, so this is your tabletop chart, and you might have that liberally around your classrooms. And when you set up Phonics International, every child will have a phonics folder because you are going to accumulate the paper-based core resources in their phonics folder. And in their phonics folder, you can put a little mini tabletop chart, and you can also put a little mini alphabet. I've got that somewhere here, little mini alphabet chart. That's where we're starting with that. So you're giving them the big picture as you build up the little systematic steps. But this phonics folder goes backwards and forwards to home in the book bag. So as a minimum, you are aspiring to discharge your duty because you are informing parents and carers every step of the way. Now, teachers say to me, but Debbie, they don't take those out of the book bag. They don't look at them. They're not interested. Never mind. You carry on regardless. You're training up your parent body and you're discharging your duty. And actually, if your children are showing that they are slower to learn, that's when you need to say it would really help if you praised your child, took an interest, have them do these core resources again if you've got a spare moment. And so really that's your duty again. Now, in use of this chart, you start your lessons by saying, oh, today, children, we're going to be thinking about the sound S. And this is how we show the sound in this column going down here with the yellow behind it. And when I talk about the sound, we always put it in these little marks, these slash marks. So introduce to the children and the parents from the outset that we show and indicate sounds in slash marks. Now today, we're going to be looking at this letter shape here, as in snake. And if you've got a child, you know, like Susan, you can say, oh, Susan, you know it's in your name already. Now, it's a really important thing to tell you about the real Alice. And I was trying to think of some Scottish names as well, you know, to sort of, right, exemplify this. Alice is an adult now, but when I was starting with one reception class, which is your P1, and I'm doing my very first lesson, which is the sound S, as in snake, and I don't say for snake, I say as in snake, because lots of the code is not at the beginning of the word. Alice, who was extremely intellectual little girl, 4 years old, said to me, Mrs. Hepplewhite, I've got that sound in my name, but I haven't got that letter shape. I kid you not, and that has led my entire resource training and program design ever since. And I needed to say to Alice, Alice, is that right? Let's together say your name. Can we hear that sound and feel the way we say it? Where is it in your name? Oh, it's at the end. And I wrote Alice's name on the board, lovely plain print, top left of my board, because I'm going to be organised for literacy. Right, this is how reading works, children. Alice, Alice, but Alice, in your name, these letters here are code for the sound. So listen to that language. This letter or these letters are code for the sound. So I'm not saying letters make sounds or say sounds. The letters and the letter groups are code for the sounds, and we're teaching a code. And then I say to Alice, here, Alice, that's the code for your name, as in the word palace. And there are other words spelt like that, like prince and dance. And I'm going to teach you more about that later. And if I want, I can go a step further, which is make my own poster. And when you make your own posters, have a tray of A5 or A4, that's half a sheet or a full sheet, pack of felt pens. Top left, do the slash marks, put the sound, which is the S, right? And then put the dash, the CE, and write Alice. And then write Prince and Dance and Palace, because already that's a spelling word bank. And it was not above the head of Alice. And a little handful of P1 children also understood that. And the rest didn't. They're so tiny, wriggling around and with their complexities. But Alice did, and I'm catering for Alice. Now, if you've got a Hamish in your class, Hamish has got the letter, but not the sound. And so if you don't teach this open approach for the whole of that complex code from the outset, if you teach it systematically as if it's in tablets of stone, you might get caught out at the get-go. And so I'm very open that we're teaching a code, using the language of the code, that the code is complex. Therefore, I'm going to teach and support you for a long time. And this is where we've gone wrong in England. So although in England we're supposed to have led the way to do research-informed systematic synthetic phonics, the truth of the matter is it's become very purist, fidelity to program, and this is the way we must do it. And teachers have become fearful about what they're allowed to do and what books they can use in their class and in their schools. And my approach is not like that. I don't want any fearfulness from the children themselves, so there's no having to hide it and rub it off the whiteboard. Whatever they don't know, we reassure them and say, don't worry, I'm going to help you with that. I'm going to teach you again. So the actual culture and ethos in the school is very different from your typical systematic synthetic phonics. Right, so let's start looking at resources. And now that I've done a little bit of background to set up the sort of ethos of where I'm going with that, let's hope this works. Right, bear with me, because this is the worst bit, trying to find my way to my resources. There we go, Phonics International, there. Okay, now, probably you've had a look at this site already. And there's a lot on this site. So sometimes people are put off because they say, oh, it's overwhelming. But there's a lot on it because you're professionals, and it's got everything there that you need, ranging from the guidance to the video training to the resources themselves, and actually trying to put across something which is not just for little 4 to 6 year olds, it's for any age as required. And it can actually make a major contribution to spelling because it builds up knowledge of spelling word banks, and you've got dictations and self-dictations all the time. And so it is worth all of you as individuals having a look at this program to get the feel for the website. So here, for example, I've got a PDF which is about the two-pronged approach, and it's got lots of information there to set you up. Now, when I had my first conversation with Martin and I pointed to a pre-recorded video which has full notes, and Martin, bless him, was saying, shall I print that out for everybody? And I was thinking about the amount of printing that would be for everybody. And I said, no, that's too much. You may not need it. But what I do suggest, he's either done it already or someone needs to do it, is when I take you to the how to set up and use your core and essential resources, that you do follow the links and you print off those guiding resources and you put them in some kind of folder with dividers so that the dividers are separating out those separate bits of guidance. So there is full comprehensive support, training and guidance in the links I'm going to show you. So in the staff room, you need a copy of this. And you can find this actually at the top of every unit in the program, but you can also find it down here called the big pink button, right? Now, to be honest, in my ideal world, over time, don't rush, you would look into this and actually print off your own copy. This is serious training. This is more than university level training, because not all universities, do a good job about this. One or two of these go to actually websites, but other links like this one here, in a nutshell, it's describing to you the synthetic phonics teaching principles, that it's teaching you the knowledge of the alphabetic code and the 3 core phonics skills and their sub-skills. So the way I call it is phonics skills and their sub-skills. You have decoding for reading, which is print to sound, and it describes it there. You have encoding for spelling, and that's when you start with the spoken word said slowly and you tally the sounds with your left hand, palm facing you, and you start with your thumb and fingers. So it's here the example is tray, and you take a big breath, you train your children to do that, and you're going tray, and then you say the sound separately, tray, and then they become sound dashes, long dashes, top left of the teacher's flip chart or whiteboard. The children interact with you and give you the sounds back, and in beautiful print, you write the t, and the A. So the A-Y is going on one sound dash. Then you check it, t-a, tray, ticket, well done. Now, when you watch videos, you will see all sorts of hand movements going on at various points, but I'm doing a very clear routine for reading. If it's print, we're just pointing under the letters and letter groups, and then run your finger under to say the whole sound. And for spelling, we're doing left hand palm facing, but you don't face the children and you don't turn your hand out. You go to right angles to your children so they can see you looking at your palm, because they need to look at their palm, and go from left to right, because that's how writing works. Now, when people do these clunky routines and don't make it crisp, for the vast majority of children, it's fine. So poor phonics, impoverished phonics, poorly designed phonics programs will be fine for most, children. But for your real special needsy children, speech and language difficulties, EAL children, muddly, restless children, the better you are at the routines and the more coherent you are across the whole school, so that you are all doing the same routines, the better you're teaching. So we talk about efficient teaching and good, clear teaching. Now, the core skill I add in is handwriting. So handwriting is something we don't always teach well. Again, it's one of those things where the mindset of the teachers of little children, that they're not ready yet, that they haven't got core strength, that they haven't got strength in their hand, that they're not ready to use the tripod grip. All of those things stand in the way of good teaching, because we're always kind and we're repeating things over and over, and we're using little incentives and rewards and little beanbag frogs and things like that. Let me help you with that. Show me your froggy legs. So you try and get it right from the start. Now, these things count because children typically hold their pencils and implements in terrible ways, even your older children. So take a look when you next in the classroom at the posture and the grip of the older children. They often have grotesque holds, contorted holds, because we've let that set in. Some of you might be like that, but when you're teaching, you need to try the tripod grip, even when you're doing it on the whiteboard. And only the other day, in a fantastic school doing fantastic no-nonsense phonics, the photos they sent me, the children were holding the pencil right down the cone with a really tense grip, which obscures the writing. So it's hold at the bottom of the painted part and right beneath the words. And for left-handers, it's still right beneath the words. Don't hook the hand over. And if you set up your classrooms with grouped tables rather than in a row or in a V or in a U, you will have children looking at the board, and even the right-handers will start to write above the words and hook their wrist round. So what I try to do, because I'm only a specialist in this field, is try to show you how to be the best you can be and put yourself in the shoes of every child. So I built handwriting in. And with handwriting, we're doing the handwriting in the phonics and we say the sounds. So when we copyright or do a self-dictation or a dictation or write or creative writing, we don't say letter names when we write. We talk in the sounds in our heads or aloud. So phonics and sounds is for letter formation within the phonics lesson. But we also need our alphabet poster, and we need to teach about the alphabet. We need to teach about letter names, and we do letter names in alphabet lessons. We might sing an alphabet song in letter names. We learn alphabetical order because we're saying that that helps with things like book indexes and the register and so on. And we want the children to be adept and know about letter names associated with the alphabet, and it's the names of these letters. And we also need them to know that there are only these letters, because you show them this and they'll think there are 1,000 letters. So we're really teaching the alphabet and the alphabetic code. You need both as main displays, and there will be overlap. So I'm very, very strong on handwriting. And I don't know about Scotland, but in England, a terrible thing started to happen and embed, where we were teaching not just plain print, but a lead-in join from the beginning for our print letters. No, 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 just print. Teach print well. The other thing that's a common misunderstanding, when teachers teach capital letters, they'll often teach capital letters by letter names, A, B, C, D, because they're often teaching to an alphabet. But I'm building in capital letters throughout, and a capital letter is A, no more and no less than the lowercase. So some of your work in P1, and maybe you might need to do it in P2 as well, is the children's capacity to know it's all A in these words and being able to match the pairs, that type of thing. And then the really important thing is not taught to guess the words in the books. And I don't know if you've followed the journalism of Rhys Williams, because he's recently had a piece come out on ITV News, and he's moved from criticising the guidance for teachers in Wales, where they're still doing multi-cueing word guessing strategies, which means guess from the picture, guess from the word shape, read on and go back what word would make sense. All of those things, whether taught or caused by default, are damaging to children's reading profile. And this has been long established in the research, but it's still pretty free and easy in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, whereas in England, that's in a sense why we're ahead, because we've recognised that that's not helpful to children. The worry is, though, that in the purest way, that you are fearful of exposing children to a range of books, because a child like Alice will self-teach once she gets going with phonics, believe you me, she's going to be a free reader pretty quickly. So then as teachers, you need to think, well, what do we do with Alice? Do we race through the phonics program? Do we teach her in a small, precocious group? No, my work has so much rich vocabulary and so much handwriting and spelling that you keep Alice at that steady pace, but you let her read where she needs to read, as long as she's not guessing and getting a bad default habit. So I need teachers to really understand this multi-cueing is not good when it amounts to guessing words, and that good phonics teaching is important for all the children. And sometimes even phonics promoters or proponents introduce it apologetically. There's an expression called time limited. We limit the time we teach phonics, like in P1 and P2, for example. And I'm challenging that notion. I'm saying it's time intensive in P1 and P2, but the alphabetic code is in all words forever. And we're dealing with thousands of words. So I'm changing the perception of phonics being associated with just infant teaching and baby stuff to being lifelong and something we're doing within reading when we need it, within spelling when we need it. And so I'm trying to change the whole perspective of what phonics is. And this really matters for children's self-esteem as well, because you will probably have children who are older in your school that could really do with a phonics intervention or a boost, but it needs not to be just like an intervention. It needs to be embodied as part of your school, that you still have those alphabetic code charts on the wall. You're still supporting all the children with the spelling. So again, very recently, because I do these free Zoom chats to give people guidance when they've got questions and things like that. And the way I'm going with Martin, I'm sure he'll come back to me at some point to sort of say, how's it going, or questions arise. And, there's a school doing really good phonics, my way, my programs. And they said, but we've still got children and they're using their charts, their little mini charts, but they're not getting the spellings right. And it's like, oh my goodness, how can you expect little children, even with excellent phonics teaching, to know which words are spelt which way? When you see the range of spelling alternatives, and some of the more unusual ones or irregular ones are in common words, and the children are just learners, how on earth can you expect them to know which spelling to use? Sometimes they know which spelling not to use. So, for example, if there's an A sound at the end of a word, it's not going to be AI. So sometimes we do it the negative way, like if there's an oi sound, it's not likely to be OI, it's going to be OY. And so there are things we can build into our teaching. But other than that, it is a case of how on earth would a child know whether to spell it with O split digraph OE, or letter O, or OE, or OA, or OW, or OUGH? Of course they don't know. So the phonics, especially for spelling, goes on and on. Oh, well done with your sounds. Let me help you with that word. But also we've made creative writing and the genre writing and the content writing. Oh, hang on a minute. Let's just stop that for a minute because I'm pontificating. We've made all of that so important to diminish spelling. So, for example, if you're doing a topic that's not literacy, your geography or your science or whatever, children are writing down some genre or a lovely story, something, and you're walking around the classroom, you see misspellings. If they are common words and you've got any children misspelling them, you need to have that word on your spelling board. So you can tap on the page at the word, point to the board, and it takes a second, and the child knows to self-correct, knows to cross out and write the correct spelling. So any high frequency words that any children throughout your whole school are getting incorrect, I would want to walk into your classroom and on a main display see it there for you to help. That's the common words. If you see a word that's a lovely word they've brought in, they've got the sounds right, so it's phonically plausible, but they've got the wrong spelling alternative, you need a constant drip habit of saying, oh, well done with your sounds, let me help you with that. In that word, you need this spelling, and you can, with older children, you can tell them the letter names. You can say the OA spelling or the OW spelling, or you can point to your chart. So you'd be saying you need the O as in oak tree or the O as in bow, because these little key example words will support you and act as a mnemonic or an aid to memory right throughout the school. And you'll be learning with the children at first and find it quite challenging at first, but it will just become part of your soul eventually. And so don't expect children to suddenly be brilliant spellers, because some will be, and they're the children who have near photographic memories, and some won't be, and you'll need to constantly help them, but don't neglect it. Now, what Phonics International is not is a formal planned grammar program. So although there is sort of grammar within words and word classes, and you've got sentences and punctuation and that type of thing, as a school, you still need to make sure that you've got a grammar program as well, right? So this is reading, spelling, handwriting, intervention, rich vocabulary, and so on. Let's go back to share again. I realized I'd just been like stuck on that one thing while I'm talking away at you. Right, so anyway, this is how to set up and use your core and essential international resources, which I want you to have a copy in the staff room. Now, down the right-hand side, it tells you everything you need to know. So whatever I've not said today or missed, this is your guidance. And before you're in a position to modify it or not do it or anything like that, you need to follow it to get the best results you can. Just here, it's showing you that you need to provide phonics folders for the children. Some people just use what's it clips, so I've forgotten the name now. So the kind of phonics folder doesn't matter, it's just a means to collect all of that content. And you need exercise books with writing lines, and even the little children need ordinary size writing lines. They do not need great big wide lines. It's not natural to do great big shapes. They'll try and fill the shape, and they'll you know, be wary of children using lines as tram lines rather than as writing lines. But when you do your spelling sound dash routine, you use those sound dashes as writing lines, which helps you to do really wonderful handwriting. You're modeling handwriting constantly. If you're with the older children, maybe from P3, and you're teaching fully joined handwriting, you've done the sound dashes with the letters and letter groups, and then draw a line under to write the full word. And at that point, you can do your fully joined handwriting for your older children. So stick to teaching print and using print on your sound dashes, and then fully joined on the final word for your spelling, right? So it's telling you here down the right-hand side what to use. It's sort of saying you're putting an alphabetic code chart and an alphabet. And then one of the notions that's really, really helpful for phonics is the expression, the phonics teaching and learning cycle or sequence. This is so helpful because you are doing routines, and there's a pattern to these routines, which is general. So it starts off with teacher-led revisit and review. So you're the teacher, you're introducing your lesson, and before you teach the focus code, you're saying, right, children, let's do some revisit and review. Now, with your tiny children, that might be when you're doing your flashcard routine, because that's the kind of thing that grabs them. But that's only some of the time doing flashcards. You do not need to do flashcards with your older children, even when you're doing phonics. Now, the beauty, one of the many beauties of having this core resources on paper with all the content, is that then the children can do their own revisit and review, their own revision, and all they have to do is turn back. So they turn back to previous work. And this again, it enhances the embeddedness of the learning. You're taking them back to something they've already been introduced to. And what they couldn't do then, they can do now. So they're getting all that practice and the maths of the phonics. And they can do that independently. And so when Alice turns back, she's going to work at a much faster speed than your child with slow processing. That child can turn back and will work at a slower speed. But the point is they don't have any downtime. So Alice doesn't do something and then sit there. You make sure that Alice has got plenty to revisit and review, or you give her a challenge within that for her turn back. But in any event, this revisit and review is very quick. We don't have to labour it. We're only doing it for a couple of minutes before we introduce the next bit of focus code. Now, you'll find when we look at resources, you've got choices to make because you've got freeze posters. So we know with phonics, we put freeze up. So as we introduce the bits of code, we add the freeze. Now, we have not got time to waste when we're teachers. We're already overwhelmed. So here's the rule of thumb. If your classroom allows for it and has a big space, even if it's high up, have your freeze for a big chunk permanently up. All right? So that you don't have to take it down, put it up, take it down. Get it up there. So you've got your alphabetic code overview chart and your alphabet and your freeze. Then with another set, you're going to have the focus freeze for today or for this week. And there you want to identify a very important piece of wall, main display. That's going to be your phonics and spelling wall, and it's very important. And that's the one that needs to be at eye level. So that can be high, this can be at eye level. And you introduce today, children, right? Oh, children, we've introduced all of these sounds. Today we're going to do this sound here. And they might have seen the hat and they're already maybe working out that that's a hat. And what's the first sound? Say it slowly, and it's a. And when you say these example words very slowly as you can, which is why you take a breath, hat, you're already cutting off or separating out the. All right. So after this, today, because I know you've got a full inset day, I want you to try that. I want you to say some of these words, and you get your children to take a deep breath. Say it as slowly as you can. And very often these sounds pop out. And because I haven't got enough time today, just know this. Your vowel sounds are mainly loud. They are the volume in the word, and they're monotone. One vowel sounds pretty much the same as another. A, e, I, E, O. You know, deep, quite deep actually. And then your consonant sounds are the tricky ones because you can't help but put an on some of them, like b, d, g. It's impossible to not have a little what we call a schwa effect or an on the end. But others, which we talk about saying purely, but it can be very helpful actually when you're just more aware of this. So if you think about the s sound is incredibly high pitched, very quiet. And the minute we overexcite children with like a flashcard routine and they say sir, they're not doing the sound. So things like let's shout out the sounds, let's excite the children, let's sing the sounds, all of that's rubbish. Let's say the sounds softly, let's say them loudly. All of these things are things you might see on videos, but they're all irrelevant and inappropriate. And so some consonant sounds are very quiet and easy to say more purely, like s, t, things like that, whereas others are more difficult. But I always use the word soap to show the great variation. So soap, soap. So the are hardly giving you any volume. It's about your mouth and the little explosion at the end. The volume is from the O. So you're going S-O. And it's a lovely example to show you how these sounds vary. Now, don't get panicky about that. Know that most children manage on clunky sounds. But over time, we are going to perfect that to be as good as we can be. So within Phonics International, I've got resources which provide for you your lesson introduction, and we're going to look at those. And also, even on your flashcards, right? I'll just show you a flashcard. Right, these are the ready-made flashcards. So my system is to pull out the focus grapheme, to have a key word example. And this is very important because the code is in different positions of the word, which is why we must always have a printed word. And when you look at phonics programs, they don't always do that. So if you look at what you call their sounds mats, you will find that they maybe don't have the printed word. Let me just show you that right now, because it's quite important. This is the importance of really well thought through design. So on my sounds mats, right? Oh, let me see if I can show you. There, you can see that, I think. Okay. Am I still sharing? I am, aren't I? Yes. Right. You've got the focus grapheme and the key and the picture to help you remember throughout the code. And you've got it in a printed word there. Whereas if you take off that printed word, some of these pictures are ambiguous. But on the reverse of the sound mats, you've just got the plain graphemes. So you can do the quickest teaching and learning. You can assess on this side. And the minute a child can't remember, you flick over, you found the letter shape, and then you've got your keyword example. So that's a mnemonic system or an aid to memory. Now, different phonics programs have different forms of mnemonics. So read writing has like little ditties, Little Wandle has little ditties and so on. But I've just got a consistent word throughout the whole of the alphabetic code chart and the resources. But on these here, they have then got two little printed words there. They are to give you spoken words. So that tells you at a glance which words to say in a spoken way, to do the sounds with the children and model the spelling routine interactively. Just two little words. On the reverse of the card, the early stages, you'll also have capital letters at the early stages. You've got letter formation to remind them of that. And then you've got printed words to practice saying the sounds. Now, at this point, the best tip I can give you is this. Don't say anything. Let the children do the work interactively. So you point and they say, and again, if you watch videos, the adult does too much. And interactive means we train the children and then we let them do it. So when you get into this, help each other, watch each other, remind each other, let the children do the work. So that one card, it's not just about it being a flashcard. That's your lesson introduction. And there's other things in Phonics International that we're going to look at in a minute. Now, the other question I get a lot of is, where are the lesson plans? You don't need lesson plans. You don't need a sheet of paper telling you which words to use, what flashcards to use, which words to write on your board, because the resources, the core resources themselves, are the lesson plans, because you have got a systematic way through. But what you can do for your lesson plans is when you're using your core resources, do an extra copy for you, put the date on, and then evaluate your lesson. Or if you were worried about a child or a child was absent, you still print off their copies and date it, because they need to make up for any gaps they miss. And then you scribble on it your work in progress notes or your plans, or did a colleague go off with those children, or did something interrupt the lesson? So the core resources themselves provide you a bit of paper to write down what happened. You've got a permanent record. And also with core resources, the children have a permanent record. And I'm going to talk about children doing their own assessment from print to sound with a sharp pencil. And they tick what they think they know, they circle what they don't know, and they can soon be trained accurately in that. Don't be put off in P1, just train them to do that. You might find at first they circle everything or they tick everything, but it won't be long before actually they know how to do it. And the adult always marks in a pen. And so when you hear that child say that sound correctly, you do a little tick above the letter. If you hear that child sound out and blend that word and discern the word correctly, you do a tick after the word. So when you are teaching in P1, you are going to maybe try to train them in a group and learn to sit opposite the children. You have 6 round, you're there, but you're doing that close observation. And eventually you'll get to the point where Alice does not need you to sit opposite and hear every word, because Alice and that group of children over there are sounding out and blending for Scotland really well. And you might get to the point where they get a tick after the line or just one tick at the end. Well done, Alice. I was keeping an ear up from the other side of the classroom and I know what you were doing. Well done. And so with routines, with core resources, children can soon work incredibly independently because they know what they're doing and they do the practice first, not you. So I do, we do, you do, soon becomes, with those core resources, you do it first, you have a go, you apply yourselves, including the special needs children, because we rob them of the learning when we do it to them, for them, and over model. So we are modeling our lesson introduction for the next bit of code, and then they have pre-prepared core resources. So this teaching and learning cycle is just indicating to you that in Phonics International, everything you could possibly need is there. And we've got cumulative sentences in the early years starter package. We've got half sentences in units 1 to 5. We've got I can read sentences in units 1 to 12 with comprehension questions and so on. So all of this here, guidance for the phonics routine, say the sounds posters and so on, is all there. Now, earlier on, I said to you about flashcards. We don't need to do a flashcard routine with those older children. So I'm going to point to this resource here. Right. These say the sounds posters are the greatest thing since sliced bread. So right at the beginning in Phonics International, we've got 3 on a PDF, 1 in the order that we're introducing the program. So at first, we're just asking the children to say these top ones, and then eventually they can tick and move down. And then the following 2 posters are muddled. So they've not just got an order, right? Now, if you look at this one here on the right, that's only halfway through the program. And for some of you, that might already be blowing your mind, thinking, crikey. Now, already at this point, you've got little red numbers after some of the letters and letter groups, because what it's saying is that at this point in the program, they will know or may know spelling and pronunciation alternatives. So on our little chart, we've got spelling alternatives, but when we read, we are doing pronunciation alternatives. So the letter A is code for many, many sounds. It's ridiculous. Letter A, it's never just A or A. It's lots of different sounds in different words. So another huge tip for you is the word in. Look at me doing this sign, in. In these words, this letter is code for in some words, in most words, in nearly all words, in just a few words, in only this word. So what you're doing is you yourself are thinking, like in most words, the S is the code for S, but in Hamish's name, right, those 2 letters together are code for sh. So I can't urge you enough just to get confident with these simple ways of saying things. Now, what we're saying here is that the children can whiz through this and say the sounds, and they can tick in pencil and you can tick in pen some of the time. So for revisit and review, they don't have to tick every time. You don't have to tick every time. But what we've now got is saturation. We don't use flashcards. There's a huge amount of code there that they're learning and revising. And when these come as a single sheet, a PDF, an A4 sheet, you can have some maybe laminated ones as round the classroom. You can blow it up to be a poster, enlarge it to A3, because at the moment we're doing that code. And when you think of your children, in your older children doing this, this does not feel like baby stuff. And some of you have to get your head round these. You'll know all of these inside out when you've used Phonics International for a year. But at first you might think, oh, right, what's a word with that in? What sound is that? You are learning with the children. And you can actually say, gosh, children, we've got this new program that we're doing for phonics, for reading and for spelling. And I'm learning about it myself. We're learning this together, which is a really nice thing to do with children, and children in modern times are very responsive to that. So these go in your phonics folder as well. So at the point you are in the program, you'll have these in the phonics folder. This becomes a core resource. Then you've got various posters, and this one here with the artist on, which I call a core teacher modeling card, is kind of the equivalent of our flashcard. So you could actually just introduce a lesson like that, or throughout the program, you've got these core teacher modeling cards. You've got freeze posters like this O as in plateau. And throughout the program, you've got this one here, top right, which is spelling alternatives in keywords. So you're revisiting the sound E, but my goodness, look at all the spellings for sound E. Tell your children that they're doing the most complex alphabetic code in the world. And this is called grouping the spelling alternatives, and you're building it up. Now, another beauty of having PDFs that you can print that off to go in the children's phonics folder. At the point you are there, which is late in the program, that colour there, I think it's unit 9. So you're now in the juniors. And so it could be that you do that. Or you have that just on your wall display. Or you might have it just in a laminated sleeve that you bring out every year when you get to that point. Or you can really do this for special needs. So special needs doesn't need another program at all. And it could be that the children who are getting genuine intervention, what would be a poster for a wall or to flag it up as a projectable, you might say, right, let's really enrich these children's phonics folders and so on. And actually, parents themselves benefit from knowing that this is not easy, that if their children are struggling with reading or spelling, no wonder. And that's what we need. No wonder they are. And so all of this is fantastic stuff. Now, the simple view of reading diagram is fantastic. We need this for our professional understanding. And it's what Sir Jim Rose introduced way back in 2006 when he was commissioned by the then government to look into the teaching of early reading. And Sir Jim and his inspectors went to Clackmannanshire and they called upon the research in Scotland of Johnston and Watson. And here's the tragedy. This simple view of reading goes back to 1986. 1986. And yet here we were introducing it in 2006 in England. And it's still vague in some parts of the UK. And I saw an X post the other day from a lovely lady. She's doing phonics, training in literacy in America. And she did a survey and only a quarter of the teachers had even heard of the simple view of reading. Now, what the simple view of reading is if you look across the lilac or the purple axes there, going from poor to good, that's the technical things of lifting the words off the page. That's where our phonics sits. We are teaching the children to lift the printed words off the page as automatically and effortlessly as we can. And then the vertical axis is the language comprehension processes, and it means spoken language. So how well the children can understand the words they've lifted, one times the other, is their reading profile. And if we use this diagram, we get an understanding professionally, but this is a brilliant starting point for assessment for your special needs children. In which case you name and date this, you put the age of the child, put the birth date, but put the actual age at the time of your assessment, and then think which quadrant does the child fit into, but the age counts. So of course your 4 and 5-year-old might have poor word decoding and poor comprehension. People mistakenly used to think that the top left, poor word decoding and good comprehension, meant your dyslexic child. But dyslexic is not about intelligence. It's not just a child who's intelligent that can't read well. Any child can show dyslexic tendencies, but we can cause dyslexic tendencies if we don't teach our literacy as well as we could. We're aiming for top right. Now, sometimes you get children who can lift the words off the page effortlessly, but they have poor comprehension. They could be autistic, they could have poor spoken language. You might be asking them to read a book that's beyond them intellectually. So, what age are they? What book are you giving them? But if you are lucky enough to work with teaching assistants, who I refer to as teachers as much as teachers, they teach our children. We often give our assistants to the most struggling children. If you share knowledge of the children, do this collaboratively, and you put a dot in whichever quadrant the named child sits, and then write some notes of what you think it is. You're kind of troubleshooting what you think it is. Now then, on the same PDF, I've followed the same idea for writing. So the technical things are the green ones. Transcription is spelling and handwriting. And I often find handwriting's not taught well. And when people share screenshots on X and they do great creative writing and I see poor handwriting, I could cry, because we can teach every child really good handwriting. And if you're interested, I've got a very quick method for teaching fully joined handwriting at Debbiehepplewhitehandwriting.com. So that might be an issue for you. And then the peachy color here, composition, articulating and structuring ideas, starting from even a simple sentence. And as the children get older, we teach them about genre writing. So how creative are they? And you can use that as well for their writing. Now for assessment, that is your starting point. Then for code assessments, I'm back to the how to set up and use. There's an audit and checklist there. There's your phonics core skills and sub skills. This is what you need, not for their code knowledge assessment. This is great for professional knowledge and understanding. The pink circle is referring to the code. That's the letter sound correspondences. But then going up the triangle, I've listed or described the sub-skills leading to the core skills for reading, for spelling, and for handwriting, and the overlap with the alphabet. And when you look at that, it's a lot. People don't really appreciate what's involved with phonics, what we're having to teach as infant teachers, all of these things. But this links to resource design as well, and why we use certain resources. But this is also good for special needs children, because again, you can name and date it and put the age of the child, and you go through and you're really saying, well, can the child see the letters and say the sounds? It says without print, because there's a sub skill for reading, which is oral blending, where the children hear the sounds of the constituent sounds of the spoken word. Can they discern the target word? That's the kind of thing you can do in games and activities all the time. You are tuning the child's ear to discern a word from its sounds, so that when they go to the full skill of recognizing letters and letter groups, saying the sounds. So I really don't like the notion of blending. We talk about blending the sounds, and that leads teachers to do artificial things like hang on to the sounds, like a that, you know, and I'm saying, let's do it nice and crisp, at. So it's more helpful to get your sounds said accurately than it is to try to hang on the sounds. So that's just a tip. So you can use a highlighter or a pen to say, what is it that special needs child can or can't do? And sometimes they don't have the phonemic awareness to discern the target sound. But sometimes they don't know the code well enough. So if they can't see letters and say sounds to automaticity, then that could be their gap, their struggle. So they could discern well, but not know the code. So this can be a really, really helpful diagram for your assessment. But you shouldn't need to do it for all the children, just for the special needs children. So that's very helpful. And then I've got a range of assessments, which you can find here and elsewhere. Let me just minimize it a minute, in case I go past it. This is just telling you about, where's the assessments? Order, let's spell that. Assessment, right here, right? So this is going to concern you for a starting point. So you've got all these various assessments here, some of which you can do as an alphabet assessment for your beginners if you want to. But don't get bogged down with assessment, because when you use the core resources, you are doing formative assessment all the time. You will know your children really well. With nonsense words, there are phonics programs and reading books that have built nonsense words into their material. No. Nonsense words are for assessment, only for assessment, because real words that children haven't seen in print before, some of which are not in their spoken language, are the equivalent of nonsense words. So there isn't a lack in my phonics program's bodies of work, and there are some nonsense words assessments there if you want. But I just want to draw, you can explore this assessment package later and decide whether it's useful. Right. Here's a good starting point, even for your older learners. So what you've got is going right through the 12 units of work of Phonics International. And down the left, you've got all the code. So you've got the code you're introducing systematically, but some children may only be able to read words that are very short. Some can read slightly longer words, and some can do the longer words still. But I don't restrict my beginning stages to just short words. So you either cover up these two columns, or these three columns at first, or fold it back so you just see a column at a time. And then you sit with children and they say the sounds first, and then they can go through these words going down. And then they work on their own sheet, and you work on another sheet. Don't mark the sheet they're reading from. And then you tick if they've got it right, and then you note if they've got something wrong. Now, with your older learners, they'll be able to read those as whole words. But let's just say, for example, they suddenly say police for picnic. And that's an alarm bell, because they are lookalike readers. They are children who can read, but they've got a guessing tendency. They haven't got a good, strong decoding tendency, reading reflex. So with your older learners, you might find, yeah, read most of it, but they didn't read that and they didn't read that. And there's nothing hard about picnic or happen or so on. Sometimes children read these words and automatically say, oh, what does kip mean? What does that mean? And that's nice, but at the moment it's technical. Now, down here in the notes, you might just write, read really quickly and confidently. Or you might say, read the words, but had to sound them out. So in the notes, you are individualizing it. So down here, then, you've got all the code and these longer words. Now, when I give you those words, they can be used for a reading assessment, but given to you as a spoken word, they can be used for a spelling assessment. So when you give children these words down here, right? Men, dim. To write, how well do they write them? And again, that might be interesting because if it's a word they're not used to reading, you might find you get just phonically spelling or letters in a strange order. So what I'm trying to say to you is, although this is the code of the program, you'll get a steer, you'll get a feel for that child. How secure is that child actually with decoding or actually with spelling? So don't use these slavishly. Don't see this as an impossibility. I want you to feel confident to use your fresh professional judgment as to where the children are with that. Then when you get children who basically know it and have a gap here and a gap there, you then have to think, well, actually, even if they know that code, look at the word bank in the word level resources and so on. So I want you to explore all these, but just because they're there doesn't mean that you need to use them. Again and again, I keep saying this about the Phonics International program. Now, what I want to do is get back to this homepage, tell you about this. The button that says free CPD resources has got a fantastic range of resources. And again, it's worth exploring it yourself in pairs or with your teammates or as a staff meeting and printing off at least some of them to create a staff room file. And then if you've got new staff or anything, you've got a ready glance, at a glance, accumulation of all the professional training on here. So explore what there is in this website. Then here it says PI program index, and I believe that Martin has set you all up to know how to put your own code in and things like that. So I'm signed in here, and I realise you might have looked at this already. Has anybody put your hand up if you've looked at this already? No? Oh, some of you might have, but some not. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. This is your index page. Now, at the top, the early years starter package is a program within a program. That in itself could have qualified for a DfE validated program. So it could be in P1 that your starting place is to explore what's there. And it's got an information booklet, so that would be great for P1. I've mentioned core teacher modelling cards. I designed them at first for the early years starter package, and then I thought they were such a blooming good idea, I'd put them in the whole phonics program, Phonics International program. So there is some overlap between the resources in the early years starter package and in the full program. Now let's just have a quick look at these, right? To show you that it's like an amazing gift to you that it's all done for you. All you have to do is get your head around how you're going to introduce it. Now, one PDF will give you multiple lessons resources of that style. So here you've got the focus grapheme in its printed word with its picture, and it's saying to you what you're saying to the children. Say as in gong. And it's saying to you, trace the graphing as you say, so you can do with your finger, do what it says there. Very briefly, talk about what a gong is. Don't start telling a long story. Don't personalize the bloke gonging the gong, all right? Literally, a gong is a percussion instrument. Who might use a gong and why? Keep it simple. It'll help them to remember, but you're not wasting time. Then, remember what I said, zip up your lips. You point under the graphemes. A grapheme means a letter or a letter group, and the children say the sounds. Then you run your finger under, and then they say the word. Don't do meanings yet, just do technical, technical, technical. If you feel that any of these is a word not known to the children, very quickly put in a sentence or ask them for a sentence, but be efficient, be speedy. Bottom right, it's giving you your spoken word. It says together spell long, sing and bring. You might just choose to do 2 of those. Here's some writing lines. So we do the left hand palm facing. Now, you might have this printed out. You might have them laminated as A3s because you're going to use them for years. Or you might project it onto your teacher's whiteboard. And so, to be honest, you don't even need to print out a lot of these resources, certainly at first. But if you print that out, that can be your freeze. So remember, I've said you've got a form of freeze around the top of your class. This could be your freeze poster on your eye level display. We've done that, and then we're going to do that for the next phonics teaching and learning cycle, and then that, and then that, and that. And you'll recognize all these pictures as tallying in with your alphabetic code chart, right? So to be honest, there you are. So you've pointed to your alphabetic code chart. Today, children, we're doing this one and so on. Then you've got exactly the same one in black and white, which you might use. If you want to do actions, they're there as an option for your teenies, but don't get wedded to actions too much. It's an option for you. Some people are so wedded to Jolly Phonics and actions and love it. And I'm saying, well, you can still do actions, but don't do Jolly Phonics actions with Phonics International. Have a look at what I'm saying there. If you do actions, you can send that home to show the parent what that is. You've got all of these, they're just another form of poster. You can project it. You can have it in a laminated loose leaf thing. So in other words, you can be creative. Do these still work? I wondered if they didn't work. I'll tell David that. But actually, if that doesn't work, you give the sounds. So you can be the audio. I'm sorry about that. Suggestions for parents and so on. An alternative freeze if you want a smaller version, that's giving the capital letter with the lowercase and so on there. Now, with these activity sheets are the driver of my work. Go to the style 2. So on the style 2, you have got all of that focus stuff, right? So now these are for the children to have. You've got letter formation, writing, phonemic awareness, where you say the word to identify the position in the word, the beginning, within, or at the end. You've got some words to read there, and that's what goes home. Now, traditionally, children always love taking something home, the gluing they've done, the feather they've stuck on. These go home, because what you're doing then is informing the parents as you go along. So with your little ones, you might start with this, and then after a term, decide to just go to the full program. And then you've also got these additional ones, which are really quite, content rich, right? We've now got spelling alternatives. And I created these at this point because in England, we've got the Year 1 phonics screening check. So I needed to bring forward some of the code. You might decide that you don't need to do that in your setting. You've got grapheme tiles, so you can make manipulatives. You've got simple word blend cards, so you've got lots of extra practice. And then you've got, throughout, you've got just 3 lines. This is where you're bringing in the handwriting as well. So this is the simplest cumulative text. Now, children have a go at this first. Circle anything they don't know. And then, what does it mean? And you build in what does it mean? And then you do a language comprehension bit. And then there they draw pictures. So throughout my program, there is drawing of pictures. And then you've got booklets and you've got some extra games and activities. And so explore that P1, P2. Now, all of these, the first letter sound correspondences do not have cumulative decodable words because you haven't taught enough, but by about I or P, you've got your cumulative words. So let's have a little look at how these work. Now, as you go to a web page, you'll see that it's saying core next to some of the resources because this is your starting point. Find out what is core. You can explore the other things eventually. Now, these core sounds book activity sheets are absolutely essential. These are driving your program. So one PDF gives you multiple lessons. So what you are doing in a phonics teaching and learning cycle is after revisit and review, and then the teacher introduces, And the children do their revision by turning back, and then you say, right, today, children, go to your chart, find that today we're doing this sound, and we're focusing on this letter, as in mat. And then there are more to learn, and I'm going to teach you more about those later. And you will find these are incredible, and you can use these with any aged child because they are not patronizing. They don't look like baby stuff. They always include shorter words and longer words. So we're not just sticking to CVC, so children just get a 3-beat pattern. Whatever they do is in 3 beats. And by now the children know this inside out, and there it's giving the adult the instructions. So whichever point in the program you need to start, these activity sheets give you your adult support. Supply teacher, student teacher, helper, everybody gets that. That is adult stuff. Now, what happens is you've introduced it through a core teacher modelling card or through your flashcard, and then you have all of this pre-printed, pre-prepared. You can print them out, but I often suggest to schools is that if they take their core resources and create a big fat folder of the paper-based resource in loose leaf sheets, and then you can whip that out for the photocopier or print it, one or the other. The children do this first. So you've trained them to head down, finger pointing, at, mat, at, men. And once they first of all, because it's a new letter, they go, and they just keep saying the sound as they point to the green letter. Then they go back and sound out and blend. And then they're doing that themselves, but all at the same time. And then they know to do the letter formation while go, So they embed, the masses of repetition to learn that bit of code. And then down here it says draw pictures of objects and animals starting with the sound. So they might think of something and they can label that. Now, when this program starts to be used with older children, they can now use dictionaries. If they happen across a word that they don't know the meaning of, they can start to look at it in their own dictionary. We're also teaching children from the earliest stage that in English language, words often have multiple meanings. And therefore, you're introducing the notion of homophones. So you have a stamp. What's that? To stamp. What do we do? So with your little children, get them up and stamp. Draw a picture above these words so there's sufficient space that you've got lots of drawing to help them remember new words. You can also slip across to your phonics exercise book, and if you want to draw something, write something, do letter formation, do anything you want in your phonics exercise book to help with learning or for intervention. If a child or children are getting wrong letter formation, that's their intervention group. The child, the phonics folder, and their phonics exercise book. Use sensibly. If you use this with older children doing joined handwriting now, and they are doing a lead join, you can modify that and they can do that as they do it. So where it says draw a picture of something you know, with older children, if they find a new word, they can draw a picture of the new word. So you've got an adaptation as this is used. Now at the bottom of this page, it gives you guidance for spelling. And basically the child has a sheet, the children have this sheet, they fold it up to under the focus grapheme. So they've got a visual of their new grapheme or focus grapheme with a blank bit. And then you give them some words as a dictation to spell. And at first, it takes more training than the decoding. You're modelling with them. They do the sound dashes top left of their folded up part. But they cannot tick this until you tell them. So that's the difference. When they're doing print to sound, they can tick to their heart's content. And the only thing that counts for accuracy is your biro, your pen. But when they do this spelling routine, it's not invented spelling or phonically plausible. They need to get the spelling correct. Now you can do that efficiently and quickly. They're all there with the sheets in front of them. And if it's correct, you can go, yep. And then they tick it, and then they draw the whole word because the parts have been correct. So this is a routine you need to get into. But that PDF gives you all of these words. So this might be used in your P1, perfectly suitable if appropriate for P2, but you might find for intervention you use it with any age child in the school as appropriate. Now, you'll start to notice I've got more than one spelling alternative. So let's give this as an example. Right, today, children, we're doing the sound A, and you find A on your chart. Where is it? It's on this side, A. Oh my goodness, look at all of these ways we can spell that sound in different words. But we're just going to look at this one today, A as in first aid. What is first aid? So again, you've done all that. They go A. Then they sound out and blend themselves, all doing it at the same time. Then they're doing their writing. You're pointing out those words that it's said. And again, we say it this way. And so there's directions there, draw the pictures. And then you stop them all when you feel the time is right. And say, right, children, now we're going to work together. So they point on their sheet. Don't you have a sheet to point at? Don't distract them. The training is that they look down on their sheet, and at a lovely steady pace, they're going aim, aid, rail. So this is your beginners or your strugglers. When you've done all that collectively, you go right back and you say the whole words: aim, aid, rail, pain. And it's brilliant for speech and language. So they've done all the technical stuff, and then you say, okay, which words didn't we know the meaning of? And you don't have to do all of those words for meaning. You pick those which are more unusual or has a useful homophone. So you are doing vocabulary enrichment, and that will work right throughout the school. Then you fold up your sheet to do the spelling. Then in the next phonics teaching and learning cycle, you do AY. And then in the next teaching and learning cycle, you revisit both. And this time, when you fold up, the children draw a line down the folded up part to create two columns. You say, right, I'll give you the word, and you point to which column you need. This is throughout the whole school. Say, right, train. They point to a column and one child gets it wrong. And you say, right, children, you need this column. You're not trying to catch them out. You don't want them spelling it wrong. So you are assessing on the one hand, which column do you think you need? You need this one. And then you tell them which column, and you give them some of those words. When they're tiny, they'll only get a few words. As they get older, you'll give them more words, because they need to be told from the outset that they can't hide away from learning which words are spelt which way. Which words are spelt which way. Spelling word bank work is built in at a very early stage. Now, all of this content is in Unit 2 in a collation book. I've got it here. Martin can look out for it. So I have taken all of those activity sheets, and I've put the core guidance for reading and listed the words, so that if you are the teacher of older learners, you can just think, right, let's glance. What have they had before? What are they getting on to? This will give you a really quick overview of the instructions for the alphabetic code, the adult guidance, and it will also give you the order of the program. Now, that's your word level work. Now, in the teaching and learning cycle, we've revisited and reviewed the code and word text. We've introduced the code, and we've now done word level. Now we need to go to text level, and you've got different choices: simple sentences, sentences which are half a page, or I can read texts. So for that piece of code, you are going to go to one of those. Sentences is in units 1 to 6. So down here, I can read your PDF will give you one side of A4 for every single bit of code we introduce. There you go, look. Where are you at? What's coming next? And the children get this, name and date it, and then they have a go first. When you think they've had a sufficient try, you stop all of them, and then you say, right, children, point to your sheet. Let's read it slowly together. Don't distract them with you having a copy. You look over their shoulder while they have a copy. Now, in this work as well is copywriting and self-dictation. Copywriting is when they read it and then go to their lined exercise book and write it out. Copywriting is perfectly valid, as they say the sounds. Self-dictation is the kind of thing Alice type child will do very early on. She reads it at her own speed, holds a sentence in her head, and then tries to rewrite it from her head, and then she can check back, read the next sentence, hold it in her head. If she's able, she can do that from P1, certainly P2. Now, when we do teacher-led dictation, it takes forever. If you can't do it in a matched group, the slower children will constantly call out and say, Miss, can you say that again? And Alice is not being catered for because Alice is so capable. So some children will be still at the copywriting a sentence stage. Alice is maybe onto self-dictation for the whole lot. So I want to give you a vision that the same resource will be accessed at the level of the child, and you need to decide what challenge you can put in for your very able children and how you are going to do more little and often for your slower to learn children, as long as you don't do it for them. I can't tell you how strong that message is. Don't do it for them, or they'll be disabled forever, slower to learn forever, with a really poor perception of what they're capable of. So you need to trust me on that, right? Now, the I can, I notice the time, I'm running out, but just bear with me. The I can read strand has got questions in the first part of the program. They're not decodable. They're for the adult to do the comprehension questions with the children. Literal, inference, and a discussion. So within Phonics International, there's masses of speaking and listening. And you've also got full color pictures, which is a nice thing to aid to memory. So for every piece of text, you've got a sort of cartoon level. They're not babyish, they're just graphic cartoon things, which will help them make it a little bit more engaging, and so on and so forth. You might decide that you don't show them that picture until they've had a go at the text, and then you bring out the picture, and then they can do their own picture. Don't avoid the drawing. Now, there's something in the core resources, which is also something in the core resources, which shows you how to group with older children. So by now, you might have a really very able group in your higher P classes, and you might have slower group. Try not to have any more than 2 groups. 2 groups is very manageable by one class teacher. So you just get them going and they can get on independently and you focus on them, and vice versa. If you've got a special needs child, they're not likely to work at the position and the place of the other children. So you might have lots of children in different positions in the program, or they might be at the same position in the program but access it differently. These are professional decisions that you need to make. But before I let you go, I want to show you 2 things. In units 1 to 6, you've got lots of extra resources and games and activities which you're going to need to explore yourselves. But super things. Don't be lazy and not do it, because this is a gift on a plate for you. But I want to show you how this is only unit 5. And when I was writing this many years ago, I was at unit 5 with my P1 equivalent class, my reception class, my able reception class. However, I'm going to show you something amazing. Read the words. Read the words, make up a story. I've not labeled this as core because it's not core, right? Look at this for vocabulary. Imagine this is for teachers of older children. Right. The children know qua. They might not know it as k in some words, So on the alphabetic code chart and in the program, you'll find that It can be k in some words, but at the moment we're going to do it as qu. And little children can sound out and blend these and talk about the meanings. But in this strand, I've got fabulous vocabulary: squabbling, squander, squeamish, squadron, quip, floundering, resounding, unsound, amount, bounds, eyebrows, powder, downhearted, towering, douse, coward, and so on. This is very vocabulary rich, and it's a nice thing to do with your older learners. Say, right, we're learning a more extensive spelling word bank with OW as code for O, because we know it can be code for ow in some words, but today we're doing it as code for O. And you can set them a task of reading those words. If they don't know the meaning, they can look it up in a dictionary or ask a friend or whatever. And then they write creatively as short a story or an adventure story using as many of those words as they can, and they can tick them off as they've used them. And you've put a little challenge in there. How many of these words can you use? Have we learnt any new words? Do we now know that? And after that, you might well do a spelling assessment. Say, right, children, work with your partner, see how many words you can remember that's spelt like that. But let me tell you about spelling tests for older children when you're doing spelling word bank work. It's not about the teacher painfully slowly saying, right, spell aglow, spell bellow, spell follows. It's not like that with spelling word bank work. You say, right, children, we've been doing a lot of work with some fabulous vocabulary spelt with this code. Can you write down in your phonics exercise books as many of those words as you can remember? So as individuals, they just start to write those words. And some might have 6, some might have 10, some might have 15, but that's perfectly suitable for upper juniors or lower juniors. And it's fun as well. And here it's saying draw the main character. You might do lots of drawing with that. So what I'm trying to show you is, yes, you could say Unit 5 will be ambitious P1, P2, but actually you can use material from Unit 5 with any of the children as you see fit. That's the beauty of the flexibility. Now, you may never use that resource with the little ones. It might be something you revisit later on. This is for you to be creative and think, how will that benefit the children? Now, let me think what I might have missed there. So really, Martin, I hope his heart's not sinking, because it's obviously going to be like a big exploratory thing that as a school you're going to do now. But what I want to summarize is the importance of display, what's permanent, what's cumulative, what you need to do yourself, your little handmade posters when you need them. So no phonics program can give you everything you need. I want you to go to the site, or Martin to go to the site, phonicsintervention.org, and look at some of the ready-made hard copy resources. So some might be worth investing in, if not now, in the future. Because, the thought of teachers printing off flashcards and laminating them, it's never quite the same as harder ones. Also, Martin can explore the phonics and vocabulary reading books, because they are quite challenging, and you might find they'll be helpful in P2 and P3, not just P1. And you can get them as an annual license to be ebooks. And that's often a good way to review them, actually, because you get to see all of them. And something that you aspire to. But I never, ever encourage schools to only use my reading books. The program is PI. The reading books are complementary or supplementary. And schools can use other phonics reading series. Just use them sensibly. But there's so many plain texts in Phonics International that you're doing apply for the children every time. Oh, I know. The last thing I really need to tell you is in phonics programs, as they've become established in England, the pace generally is 4 letter sound correspondences introduced per week. I think that's far too fast. And the very fact that Phonics International is giving you code level, word level, text level resources, spelling, word bank work, handwriting. So the rule of thumb is this: whatever time you've got available, whatever point you reach on the phonics teaching and learning cycle, you start at that point next lesson. So don't think, I must do a piece of code today and another one tomorrow and another one tomorrow. No. Quality. I've talked about the quantity of practice, sheer mathematical quantity. Now it's the quality of your teaching and actually going through that phonics teaching and learning cycle. You might take longer when they're little. When they're older, you might find you can do all of that code word text in one session because you've become so fast. Maybe there's a homework finishing session. That's the flexibility you will work out over time. Right, I think I've covered the main elements to talk about. Martin, do you think I've missed something, or is there anything you're bursting to ask me at the moment, or anybody else?
Can you hear me now, Debbie?
What about your other one, Martin? Because the other audio's off and I can't hear you at all.
All right, can you not hear me now?
So in the other box there, oh, and let me stop recording.
How's that one?